So Paula, can you tell me how you became interested in breastfeeding and lactation?
Well, this is an old story. Um, I think my first interest really began when I was working as a clinical nurse specialist in 1975 at Michael Reese Hospital and Medical Center in their neonatal intensive care unit. And we had a baby in the nursery at the time whose mother was a La Leche League leader. And when her baby was ready to begin feeding, she asked why her baby couldn't begin feeding at the breast instead of feeding with a bottle. So I was intrigued with that, and I remember discussing it with the neonatologist who was in charge of the service at the time. And I said to him, this mother has the oddest request. Instead of starting her baby with a bottle, she wants to start her baby at the breast. And his words to me were, well, I don't see anything wrong with that, but you stay with her. So I remember walking back into the room where she was going to breastfeed her baby and saying to her, I'm going to sit with you. And then I realized I had no idea what I was looking for, how I was going to judge anything about the baby breastfeeding. And her words to me were, you just sit here and I'll teach you everything you need to know. So that was really my first interest. This little baby, when home feeding at the breast, never was able to bottle feed. And our program at Michael Reese Hospital and Medical Center really became one that we called Breast Before Bottle for premature babies. And it was that clinical program that really interested me in doctoral study to begin to compare the physiology of suck-breathe patterning when babies served as their own controls for breast and bottle feeding. And it really grew out of that very initial encounter with this mother who was a La Leche League leader from southern Illinois, or southern Indiana, northern Indiana.
How did you develop a relationship with Medela?
With Medela, I think my first relationship with Medela was with Brian Silver, if I'm not mistaken. And this was in and around the baby weight scale, because my initial NIH work really involved being able to measure how much milk babies consumed at breast. And when I was working on that study, and it was really for research purposes, and we would study the babies over time from when they first started breastfeeding until they went home. And we would increasingly measure each time what the babies consumed at breast, so we knew whether they were feeding nutritively or non-nutritively. And the mothers would routinely say to me, I wish I had this scale to take home with me. I really need one of these scales in the home. So my interest as far as a scale to use to measure milk intake really began before Brian approached me with the idea that there was a scale. And that was my first involvement, was doing the study with the baby weight scale for Medela.
Paula, you'll be speaking at Medela's 6th International Breastfeeding Symposium in Amsterdam. Can you tell me what will be the focus of your presentation?
Well, the presentation will be a blending of evidence and practice. And with respect to the evidence, there's lots of new information about human milk really serving more as a medication, or at least as much as of a medication as a food for premature babies. So I want to talk about some of the new evidence about the programming potential for human milk, especially as an immunomodulatory agent that protects babies from a number of the inflammation-based morbidities. And along with that are best practices, such as how do we make sure babies get colostrum as a first feeding? How do we make sure mothers get enough milk to be able to feed their babies as high amount of milk as possible for the longest period of time? So I'll talk about some of the lactation-based technologies, including the Preemie Plus suction pattern, the chromatocrit, the baby weight scale, as well as all of the different best practices that go along with using those technologies.